Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. Please come on in and fill the room. Don't just all stand at the back. There's plenty of room here. Maybe everyone should be standing up at this point. There's so many people here. Please come on in. Fill the space up. Do not be out in the corridor. Come on into the room. So welcome everyone to the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, December the 6th. To start the meeting, will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Please be aware this meeting is being live streamed on the Township YouTube channel, and the meeting may also be audio or video recorded by people in the room. And to start this evening, we have a very pleasurable thing to do. We have the pleasure of recognizing and congratulating Police Officer Robert Gilbert on his recent promotion to the rank of Sergeant in the West Goshen Police Department. And Chief Carroll will introduce him and lead us through some remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank everybody for coming. First, I want to thank the board for their continued support of our police department. We obviously couldn't do events like this without their support, and we really appreciate it. Tonight we are going to promote Rob Gilbert to the rank of sergeant. Rob came to us more than 20 years ago, in the year 2000, through Newtown Square PD, and before that Birmingham Police, where I've just been informed he's the 5th officer to come from Birmingham and been promoted here. While here, in his last 20 years, Rob has served as a patrol officer, a traffic unit officer, a training officer. He served time on our emergency response team, and he has been an EMT, an emergency medical technician, for his entire career. Rob has held several leadership positions within the department and has received leadership training from the FBI, Penn State University, and the National Tactical Officers Association. During our review to fill this vacant sergeant's position, Rob received high marks from all of our current sergeants, and all of them expressed their support for him being able to do the job. As you can probably tell by the amount of attendees here, Rob's a pretty popular person in the community. He grew up here, has remained here for most of his life, and I've rarely gone to an event in Westchester where someone didn't ask me how Rob was doing. So on behalf of the entire West Goshen Police Department, it's my honor to recommend Officer Rob Gilbert to be promoted to the rank of sergeant here tonight. So if I could have the Honorable Judge Bailey come forward, and Rob, if you could bring your family up, please.
I'll stand over here. That's all right. That's all right. You all set? Hand on the Bible. Raise your right. Yes, sir. I, Robert E. Gilbert,
I, Robert E. Gilbert,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will
and that I will
enforce the laws of this Commonwealth
enforce the laws of this Commonwealth
and the ordinances of West Goshen,
and the ordinance of West Goshen,
and that I will discharge the duties
and I will discharge the duties
of my office
of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
I do further swear and affirm
I do further swear and affirm
that I will uphold,
that I will uphold,
obey, and enforce
obey, and enforce
the law without consideration
the law without consideration
to a person's race,
to a person's race,
color,
color,
sex,
sex,
religious creed,
religious creed,
sexual orientation,
sexual orientation,
age,
age,
national origin,
national origin,
ancestry,
ancestry,
handicap, or disability.
handicap, or disability.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you, Chief Carroll. I would like to say on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, we extend our thanks and gratitude to you, Officer Gilbert, for your years of dedicated service in the police department to date, and congratulate you on your promotion to Sergeant. Well done.
I'd also like to thank the police officers for your dedication and what you do. Thank you.
Well, this is a great way to start a meeting. I wish they could all start like this, but I'm sure you want to take some more photos, so we're just going to take a 5-minute break while folks who want to go take photos can leave the room and we can get on with the business of the championship. Thank
Brian say hi. For the namesake. My nephew Hunter. Mother-in-law.
Hi, how are you?
My young Grace and our friend. Heather. Sorry. Dude. Thanks a lot, man. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Dude.
Rob, can we do the bus to me?
I'll see you, Sarge.
All right, see you, Sarge.
They're just in the middle. It's going to be so
Okay, time to reconvene to stay for the public meeting. During the very good. Well, after that fun and excitement and well-deserved segment, we're going back to the boring business of the township now. So, the first item here is public comment. Is there anyone here attending who has a new issue to raise with the board this evening or a comment? This is for any items that are not on the agenda. Every agenda item will be a chance for public comment. Doug?
Good evening, everyone. Doug Waite, 1001 Woodview Lane. Thank you for the Hanukkah menorah downstairs. That's great. Also, please consider reinstituting the Boards and Commissions Appreciation event as we did in 2019, I believe, for next year. They worked very hard for free, but we enjoy what we do. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Doug. Next on the agenda is recognition of sponsors for the Township Summer Concert Series and events, and I'm going to hand it over to Ken to lead us through that.
Okay, thank you. On behalf of West Goshen Township, it is a great honor to recognize our sponsors for our Summer Concert Series. We have not had the opportunity to do it for a few years between COVID and 2020. And last year we had an abbreviated summer concert series where we did not, quite frankly, have enough time to gather concerts once we got the all clear. So this year we were able to have a full summer concert series thanks to our partners, our sponsors. We are happy to not just recognize them, to put them in the permanent record of the township minutes. And I would like to invite forward Robert Safone, who is the chairman of the West Goshen Township Park and Recreation Board, and Sally Yoder, the Vice President of the Friends of West Goshen Parks, to present the certificates of appreciation.
everybody. Thank you.
So, as a silver level sponsor, we thank Carroll Engineering for their participation. Is Chris Peterson from Carroll Engineering here? Yes. Thank you, Chris. No, you come forward. Yes,
Thank you very much. Hammond Township, we appreciate your sponsorship.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and on behalf of Carol, thank you very much.
And because I'm doing double duty, I will ask you to turn around this way for a photograph. All right. We'll take two. One more. Thank you. And Chris, if you can stick around, we'll take some more pictures outside afterwards. For HRG, Lance Weatherly, the Assistant Vice President.
Thank you very much for your support. Thank you very much.
We appreciate and recognize it's just be involved with supporting these great programs for residents and visitors of West Goshen.
We really appreciate it. The people that live here and work here, that's what makes it all happen. Thank you, Jack.
And for Janowski Law, we have Maria Janowski, Principal Partner.
Thank you very much. Hammond Township, we really appreciate your support. People like you that make this all happen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we have two gold level sponsors for the summer concert series. For Buckley Bryan McGuire Morris, I invite Kristen Camp to come forward.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, Kristen.
Somebody who lives across the street from West Goshen, I utilize your parks and come to the events that you sponsor. So myself and a lot of the members of the firm are residents of the township, that we appreciate the work that your committee does. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for Unruh Turner, they indicated they were unable to send a representative. I'm guessing that has not changed. So we will reach out to Unruh Turner to thank them personally. So thank you, and once again, let's have a round of applause for all the people who helped support the concert series.
And in addition, on behalf of the board, again, I'd like to make sure that we extend our thanks to those companies who sponsored our 2022 Summer Concert Series and helped make the events possible. Having events like these makes for an enjoyable evening for everyone. It helps also create a vibrant community here in West Goshen. We appreciate your support and help. Thank you again.
Thank you. And if the sponsors don't mind stepping out, we'll fight our way through the police crowd and get some more photos. So thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is item number 6, which is ordinance number 7, 2022. It's a zoning ordinance amendment for an historic inn. And Kristen, would you like to lead us through the background on this?
Sure. So this is a proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance. So the minutes to reflect that we followed all of the state law requirements to do a zoning amendment. We advertised tonight's hearing in the Daily Local on November 21st and November 28th. We sent a copy of the ordinance to the law library and to the Daily Local News on November 18th, 2022. We sent the ordinance to the Chester County Planning Commission for review and comment. They sent a letter back on November 4th, 2022. And then finally, your own Planning Commission reviewed this at their meeting on September 13th and recommended that the board approve this change. So this came about as a result of a petition filed by the Droughton family, who continues to own the Manor House lot, where the historic Manor House, I guess, that's currently being used for wedding events and things like that. But they had requested that the zoning ordinance be changed to allow the property to be utilized for a historic inn. So we proposed, actually Mr. Colagreco, on behalf of the applicant, put together the ordinance. Staff and myself reviewed it, gave some suggestions, Planning Commission gave some suggestions. So now what you have before you is zoning text amendment to add a definition for historic inn, to allow it in the R3B Flexible Design Conservation District, Zone C, as a use, to identify appropriate area and bulk standards for the historic inn, and within that is also parking requirements. So they have presented a concept plan for how basically the family would like to see the historic nature of the property continue, but in order to be able to properly maintain it, they need a viable use. So they're intending to bring it back and restore it, and as well as add some additional rooms outside of the building, use the historic carriage house, and build another replica of that. So as Mr. Colagreco is here, if anybody has specific questions on the proposed development, but this is really the first step. This ordinance has to be in place before they could file the application to move forward.
Mr. Chairman, in addition to what Ms. Camp just summarized, I'd also like to note that it was also reviewed by the Township's Historic Commission, given the nature of the property, who were supportive of the ordinance, and it was also reviewed by the Land Planning Committee as a first step.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Chris. We also discussed it here as the board previously when we authorized it to be advertised for potential adoption. Has anything changed from the last meeting in terms of the content of the proposed ordinance? Is there any text changes, anything that's different from what the board has previously seen?
I don't believe so.
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't believe so.
Okay. Does the board have any questions or comments on the proposed ordinance number 7, 2022?
Make the motion to adopt.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion to adopt ordinance number 7, 2022, which amends the West Goshen Township zoning ordinance in order to permit an historic inn in the R3B Flexible Design Conservation District, Zone C. Is there any public comment or questions on the motion? Margie?
Yeah, I have a question about entertainment. I know that the new homes that were built within a certain 500 feet had to sign an acknowledgement when they purchased their home that they were within that area and that they were aware that entertainment happens there maybe 60 times a year. So I'm just curious if there should be a provision in here regarding when outside entertainment can only go till 10 o'clock or 12 o'clock, or does that fall under other zoning issues?
Well, there's noise ordinances and things like that would control.
Yeah, so these people, I'm just saying, they bought their home knowing that this was a special event venue, and numerous times per year, they could hear noise coming from this location. What's going to happen when it could be 365 nights a year? So I just wanted to just bring that up, wondering if that needs to be in there somewhere.
Thank you for your comment. Any other thoughts on that? Is it just controlled by or other ordinances like you suggested?
I would agree with Chris. I think it would be controlled by the noise ordinance.
And it's being permitted by conditional use. So you're going to have conditional
forward.
use hearing, and you'll get specific operational testimony about exactly who the operator is, what types of events, how frequent those events are. If you feel that there should be a condition imposed over and above what's already in your code, that would be the appropriate time to do that.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Doug?
Good evening, Doug White, West Goshen. I'm generally in favor of this. We were on the Planning Commission when we discussed this. Also, this reminds me that the historic ordinance had provisions in it to allow owners of historic homes to do things with those homes in order to preserve them that would not ordinarily be allowed. So this is somewhat like that. So I think this is something good to help it be restored, conserved. And also the details such as the traffic light and noise, that can all be worked out when it comes before us in an actual land development. That's true.
Yeah, zoning, conditional use, as well as land development.
Yeah, so all the detail. This is just conceptual.
This is just, we're not approving a plan. They're not approving a plan. They're approving the text changes to the zoning to allow them to submit a plan.
Right, for concept, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm ready to take a vote. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next on the agenda is item number 7, discussion and possible approval of the service agreement between West Goshen Township and Good Fellowship Ambulance Company. Just trying to introduce this subject by a bit of background. Chris, obviously you're going to as well. I've teed it up here. So the board and the township has had ongoing discussions with not only GFAC but other fire and EMS providers in the area that service the community here. And we all understand and recognize the need to get funding on a more sustainable level for these excellent service providers that we have. And we have had extra demands placed on these service providers as a result of several events, including the closure of hospitals in southern Chester County. The board took the initiative with a couple of our board members initiating a coalition, the Fire and EMS Coalition team. There's had ongoing conversations throughout this year. And one of the key outcomes of that was to work towards having a contract agreement with GFAC for a defined equitable funding arrangement between all municipalities served, with the funding share based on both population and call volume experienced in particular townships and boroughs. And that's why tonight we have a proposed agreement in front of us for consideration and possible adoption. Chris, do you want to talk about some of the specifics in here that you've worked up with Mr. Brogan from GFAC?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And Jazz, feel free to correct me if I misinterpret anything. So the agreement that's before the board this evening would be a 3-year agreement. It does provide for certain termination provisions by either party based on a 90-day notice. By September 1st, as it's currently written, GFAC would have to provide budgetary and call volume information to the township. The call volume information would be based on a 12-month period running from September 1st of the previous year to August 31st of the current year, and that's to provide a full year's worth of data to all the municipalities involved. Essentially, the agreement that's before the board is being mirrored by a lot of their partner municipalities and their 10 municipalities that they serve in their service area. The population information is going to be based on data that's available through the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission through their Data Navigator tool, which is something that's updated regularly based on the census data, as well as providing estimates that will be used. And the call volume data will be real time. I believe that hits on everything. Is that correct? Chaz, is there anything on this?
Yeah, just the sampling of the call volume. Sean and I discussed this as well. I believe we're going to look at August of 22 to July of 23, that 12-month sampling. That'll give us 4 to 6 weeks to submit final data to the township for the next year. So.
Yeah, so just on that, so just so we're clear, what's suggested is the language in here is going to be, let's see if we can find the right section here. Section 4, right. It's going to be, like Chaz said, from August to the end of July. This is 12 months. So that way we can keep the September the 1st date, if that's okay, Chaz, with the provision of the information.
Yep.
So, just make sure I find it.
And in my amendment of the board on this topic, I made a recommendation that if we were to adjust the deadline to maybe shrink the termination window to 60 days to provide time to review. However, if it's staying in September 1st, I think we can stay with the 90-day provision that's currently in the agreement.
Yeah. Just a couple of questions for myself. What is the status of this agreement with the other municipalities? Have they got basically this copy? Are they in a very similar timeline to try to get this approved here before the end of the year?
Yeah, so all 10 townships have a copy of this. Thank you to Kristen, who generously did this contract for us pro bono. We've submitted it to all 10 of our townships we serve. Chief Nelly actually told me tonight that Birmingham was the first to approve theirs.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, verbally, it sounds like we have support from the majority of the townships so far.
Any feedback from the townships as far as the language that's written there?
Thornbury had a couple words, but that was it. That's another change that we made.
That's good.
Yeah.
Just on the way that DVRPC calculates the population data, so obviously they've got the census basis that we've just got, which is a good set. Is their data dependent on townships providing them with information about new builds, use occupancy permits, how do they keep that data set current?
I believe they get their estimate from the American Community Survey that comes out through the Census Bureau. They do it once a month every year, and I actually called for it recently, but then they update it based on that.
Yeah, I mean, we expect relatively minor change in terms of the head. I mean, these townships were pretty much built out, right? So there's going to be small adjustments in terms of the population. The call volume is going to be the one that has a bigger impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I know that the Census Bureau did just release a new, I contacted an individual at DVRPC about how often it's updated and what tools they use to update it. And they did point us to a new tool that the Census Bureau has come out with that makes getting their data a little bit easier and less cumbersome. So if necessary, we can utilize that as well.
And this would be a learning experience during the first term of this contract. If you find this is a cumbersome thing that really makes very little difference, we can adjust it in the future.
Yeah, it's a great starting point, and this is a culmination of years of communication. We've been working towards this with former Executive Director Holman since 2018, so we're happy to be here finally with a contractual agreement going forward. We appreciate that that we need the funding support as well as the community support to continue our operations.
I just want to say on behalf of the coalition, I appreciate all the work everybody's put into this document and the input and support. So thank you.
So following from this agreement, there was a change in section 1, which delineates the geographical area which you serve. That can be done if we wanted to change this.
Yeah. If we were going to change the geographical area, that would change the formulas. So I think we'd have to reopen the contract if we did that.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
No, just thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion from a board member to approve the proposed service agreement between West Goshen Township and Good Fellowship Ambulance Company?
I'll make that motion.
So a motion and a second to approve the agreement. Is there any public comment or questions on the motion? Very good. We're ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen, as well. Okay, next on the agenda, I believe item number 8, Chris, is deferred for a future meeting.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recommend the board table item number 8 on the agenda. And my reason for that is we reviewed this at a staff level, and there are questions that we have sent to members to the entire SAC that we'd like to get answered. That being said, I do not see an issue with procuring the necessary trees that would be outlined to be utilized because, as speaking with Mr. Woodward, our park, as well as our park superintendent, we have identified areas where they can be utilized within the township. And I believe there's no cost to the township at all.
Okay, so we just going to proceed with doing
As long as the board is okay with procuring the trees at this time, is that correct? There's no cost to the township for them?
I don't think that's I'm sorry. I'm Barbara Reinhardt. I'm a member of the SAC committee and a member of the subcommittee that developed the proposal. I think that there is no cost depending upon whether we go with Bartlett or the committee, but the trees have to have a plan. You can't just have the trees and not give them and just give them away or whatever. So I don't really support ordering the trees if we don't have a plan. So if we have a plan, then we could go ahead and procure trees, but just procuring trees without a plan isn't sustainable.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. So maybe we should just wait then. What does he need to bring this to?
I think there's a December 14th deadline to place the order. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if we tell them that we can utilize them within the township's park system and give some way that
do you know?
The
application requires that we identify a location for the trees, for through the K-10 program through the conservation district. So I don't believe we can just say anywhere in the township.
Dave and I have identified 3 locations where they can be utilized. So we can give those to use as can be modified if things change.
I can find out. I don't.
Okay. I think between now and December 14th, we can find out.
Yeah, they
Would you want us to approve the procurement conditional upon getting that question answered?
getting a plan in action.
Well,
Yeah.
we could approve the procurement of them subject to some flexibility on a specific location, as long as we have locations identified where they could be used.
And Dave, Doreen, Jamie, and I have identified 3 locations right off the top of our head where they can be utilized effectively.
Is that possible to have them installed also within a certain time frame with manpower?
It's volunteer, it's gonna be volunteer, so this is really for an Arbor Day project in the spring. And we also were copied on an email today by Scott, our newest member of the SAC, who's working with some schools. There's actually there's a program now that's sort of branched off, no pun intended, of Tree City, which is called K-12. And so he's able to get students, if we need it, to maybe, and he's already talked to a few schools, their environmental clubs that would be able to maybe volunteer some time too. So I think that we have a lot of potential options, not only locations, but volunteer hours that we put in, so I'm optimistic. We were thinking about ordering how many trees, Barbara?
It was 200 to be planted and 200 to be given away in a program of leading towards the homegrown national park idea. So that I guess I'm asking what the committee thought of the proposal, not just the critique of it, but the educational component, the corporate sponsorship component, the community involvement, this volunteer component. You know, how viable is that? If Barker Park is not the site, is the proposal, are there parts of the proposal that are acceptable rather than, I mean, we could just go back and talk within ourselves, but that doesn't help much if we don't have any feedback.
Well, so I think that the best course of action right now is to look into this before the December 14th deadline to order the trees, really talk amongst ourselves to choose another location, because there's many within the township that if need be, we can do this kind of project in a different area this year. And then with the Barker Park project, we can continue to work with staff in talking about what we want to do there. We have gotten some feedback from staff and from our engineer, talking about some of the issues that we would run into with the proposal. I loved the proposal. I thought it was great. It was really well written. I think that all outlining volunteering and how we want to make this an educational component, I'm a huge fan of. But I think that there's some logistical issues that as a committee, we're going to need to look at. And unfortunately, this is all sort of coming together at the same time with needing to get this in before the 14th. But like I said, I think I'm optimistic that, as was stated, we can find a place within the township to plant the trees.
And I don't want to speak for any of the staff members, but none of the concerns were related to the volunteers, the educational components, anything like that. It all had to do with the engineering, logistics, the maintenance, like the ongoing maintenance, things of that nature. Is that correct, Dave?
Yeah.
And I did misspeak in the last meeting. So in the last meeting, the last sustainability meeting, I said, I don't know that we really need to bounce this off Parks and Recreation Committee, but I think that we really do. And if anything, having their involvement and their participation will be a benefit to our committee and the Arbor Day.
So I think if between now and December 14th, if the board wishes to authorize the procurement of the trees, I think that would be completely acceptable. Between that and the 14th, we can answer the questions that you might need for the plan that has to be submitted and identify the locations. And then I also think in terms of the volunteer and educational components that are in here, I think those can be submitted as well. Because we are going to need volunteers to help plant them, and there is a valuable education component that's included.
Yes.
Can I just clarify? So the trees that we have to place an order, if we use the conservation district, an order has to identify the species of trees. And they are also, our plan was to order trees and shrubs. So when we do that, the species that we identify would be because they are appropriate for Barker Park. So that's why, so any other alternative locations would also have to be the same conditions that would be appropriate for the species that we order. So I don't know what the other locations are that you had in mind, but
One was, and Dave, correct me, Fresh Meadows area, which is right now just a large open field. Cooper Smith Park, which has had its understory kind of taken away. And then what was the third one, Dave? Hamlet Hill.
And Dave also offered and suggested that if we wanted to go out and see the different locations, that he would be willing to take us out. I'm going to take you up on that at some point. So I think that would be good for us too.
So is that specific concern able to be resolved before the 14th?
I guess so.
Okay. Other questions? Margie?
Can any of these trees be used for any of the stream bank restoration projects that are in the PRP?
I mean, these are not like, when we say trees, I believe they're small 3-inch saplings.
What do they put in the stream banks when they restore the stream?
Sometimes saplings, sometimes larger trees. It depends on the design, and none of the designs have been done, so it would be premature to use these trees for that purpose.
We just did the stream bank restoration at the sewer plant. They're all 3.5 to 5-inch caliber trees.
Again, this is all species dependent because a stream bank is totally different than the upland that we were talking about. The area we're planning doesn't have anything to do with the floodplain, doesn't have anything to do with stream bank. It would be a totally different set of trees that you would want that could withstand that floodplain.
Maybe it would be advantageous for to see members of the subcommittee to meet with internal staff in the near future and just outline proposed areas where they're going to go, and you guys are the experts on what type of trees need to be there. And before the 15th, obviously, and then we can order the trees based on what your recommendation is, probably run it by the Park and Rec also, but then put in it too, along with the employees of the West Goshen Township.
So I think the next step would be maybe tomorrow set up a meet, contact me and Dave and Robert and Brian as well. And we can sit down and have a conversation before the 14th.
And then just run it by Park and Rec and any other committee that needs to see it.
January.
And then you can meet your deadline. Is that
Doug?
work for you, Dave?
Okay, just two quick questions. First one is, do the trees have to be on township property? Could they go on HOA property? And there has to be township property?
Yes.
Okay, so how about in there, just a suggestion, on the new park off of Allen, where the parking lot is, and then there's the retaining walls, that area's been cleared basically, but it's going to be part of the new park, if we could maybe...
It's not dedicated.
We don't own the property.
Yeah, okay.
So just so I'm clear, so there's a deadline we have to meet to get some application to get the trees for free, is that correct?
That's correct.
15.
So, so we're going to authorize proceeding with that as the plan tonight, and then we hope that by getting together, we can fine tune exactly what the species are that are going to order because of potential different areas other than Barclay Park. Is that where we are?
Right.
Okay.
Species and location.
So is there any other questions about that approach? Okay, is there a board member who would like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
So the motion is what, Tina?
The motion is to proceed with ordering the trees before December 14th and get together with the SAC committee and Dave on determining what species are required to be installed at specific locations that are outlined.
Oh, by staff. Okay. Thank you, Tina. Is there a second? Thank you, Ashley. So a motion and a second. Is there any public comment on the motion? Ready to go? Ready to take a vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. The motion passes 5-0. And I guess if you can't come to a conclusion on what needs to be ordered, we're just going to miss the deadline. So that's the worst case situation. That we don't have a way forward and we just can't submit it. But the goal is to try to achieve that. Okay, next on the agenda is item number 9, discussion and possible approval of a proposal from Ward Landscaping Services for maintenance to the historic Weeping Beech Tree on Old Fern Hill Road. Chris.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So before the board this evening is a proposal from Ward Landscaping Services for maintenance on the historic beech tree on Fern Hill Road. The proposal would include removal of all invasive vegetation around the tree, removing all down branches and trash, there's an observation deck that would be removed, removing the vines on the fence, and continuing maintenance on the tree. The work to be completed at this time would be removing all the invasive vegetation around the tree, removing all the down branches and trash, and removing the observation deck for a total of $3,650. The SAC currently has just over $4,000 remaining in its 2022 budget, so there are adequate funds to complete this work. The remaining items outlined would be completed in the spring of 2023, and to begin the maintenance program then as well. Since this does involve a contract with a service provider, it should be authorized by the board, and the SAC did recommend approval of the proposal at their November 22nd meeting. The township is actively working on an easement with the property owner. I believe we just received comments back from him the other day.
No comments back.
Oh, no comments
He said
back,
that he
yeah.
sent it to his lawyer and we'll be back in touch. But do we, I know that in the past, he granted, through just email, the ability to go onto the property. Do we have specific consent to do this work?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do. We have consent from the owner to do the work. All he requested was a certificate of insurance listing his company as an additional insured on the contractor's policy. Susan was able to procure that, and we provided that to the property owner, so he is satisfied.
You know, I would just mention to the board, he's been very cooperative,
Yes,
very helpful,
extremely.
very good to work with.
Very, very responsive, very easy.
So the $3,650 that is immediate work, is that going to be done in December?
Yes.
Okay, so it'll be done in this year and on this year's budget from the SAC?
Yes.
Okay, and then the $500 for the fines removal, that will be done in the spring of next year, will be part of?
It will be part of the 2023 budget. That's correct, Susan, right, in the spring?
Yeah. So that would be part of the $5,000 that we have for the SAC budget?
Yes.
Okay. And there's also an ongoing maintenance suggestion from Ward Landscaping of up to 5 service visits a year at $400 each. Is that just a proposal, or what are we thinking of that this evening?
That's a proposal. That is a proposal. And speaking with Susan, I think that has to be evaluated based on like the response from the tree. Is that correct, Susan?
Yeah. Well,
So-
he says up to, yeah, well, it depends how fast things grow. You know, it's been a few years, so it's hard to say whether he would need 5 visits, but there probably would be more than 1. It could be 1 or 2, but up to 5 per year.
So the SAC members would monitor the site in terms of what, if there was work required, and then you would discuss with Ward having them come in and do the work, and it's going to be around $400 per visit, right? And like you said, it might be a couple of times a year based on your ask for them to do the work. We're not committing to 5 visits a year and $400 each. Is that correct?
I guess our ask was just for this year. So
Okay.
if you're looking at next year,
Okay.
that would be different.
Yeah, so all we're going to do tonight is authorize the $3,650 for this year's work, and also recognize that this $500 needs to be spent next year to get the fines out.
Correct. If there was, for the ongoing maintenance, I would probably want an actual like engagement letter, like a separate contract, just sort of outlining that.
I mean, to me, it would be, if the SEC is amenable, if they monitored it and then said, okay, we need this to be done, we can then, on an as-needed basis, contract with Ward, and then we could just budget each year a placeholder for expectations that we would need some kind of.
Would members of the SAC be monitoring the site, or would?
Well, I think, yes, that's kind of what I think would make sense. I mean, we don't, either that or we have to have, like Chris said, a formal agreement in place with a fixed cost every year for someone to be doing it for you, which is doable, but that becomes something that may or may not be needed, really.
Or do we have the contractor go out periodically to check this area to see
My only
if
worry
it's
is,
required?
yeah.
Well, we can address it next year. You can talk about it more at the SEC, that's right.
So then, just to be clear, we're just talking about a one-time shot of $3,650.
That's correct.
There's already budgeted.
We're not talking about, he's talking about $2,000 a year for the maintenance, so we're not gonna, that won't be part of this motion.
Yeah. Okay, so we've discussed it. Is there a motion from a board member?
I'll second.
So a motion to proceed with the work described to be done this year in the amount of $3,650 by Ward Landscaping. A motion and second. Is there any public comment on the motion?
So,
Here.
is there no reason our own people can't do that?
Probably, just,
I think it would be better to have.
yeah, professional.
Well, we do have professionals, don't we?
We're gonna be working on private property.
Yeah, it's working on private, it is working on private property until we secure the easement and communication with the existing property owner. I think we better use an outside contractor.
It's a good question, thank you.
Yes, maybe we could look at township staff doing the maintenance going forward into next year, but one shot, clean this thing up, get it up to spec, and then after
Their
that.
only concern was the insurance, right? That they have insurance, correct, to be on the property. Just something to think about.
No, that's a good question, good suggestion.
So, just as context and not in a direct response to your question, this maintenance is necessary as a predicate for our arborist, Harvey Verman, who we previously approved to go onto the property and assess the tree. So this is necessary for him to complete the assessment. And he specifically recommended this landscaper as being someone who is sensitive to the condition of the tree. This is an old weeping beech, and it has some very interesting tree limbs. And this Bernie Ward understands how to go around the tree limbs and doing this work. So that was just to give you context. So it's not just the landscaping portion. It's part of the larger project, which is to assess and treat the tree so that it can be as healthy as possible.
And he specifically recommended this company?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Doug, you had a question?
So this proposed cost is typical of what this kind of work would be?
Seems reasonable to me. I mean, it costs a lot to deal with trees, I know that, so.
Yeah, as long as you feel it's a reasonable price for
I think
replacement.
Susan would be the expert on that, right, Susan? In the job that you do.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Go a motion, a second, so we're ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. The motion passes 5-0. I do want to thank the SAC, Susan, Barbara, for your work in reaching this point and looking after this tree. It's been something we've wanted to do for a little while. I do want to also, for the record, recognize the cooperation and support from the property owners to this point as well. So thanks to them. Next on the agenda is item number 10, continued discussion on the 2023 West Goshen Township budget. Chris.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So at the November 15th meeting, there was a presentation on the 2023 preliminary budget, and the board adopted the preliminary budget and authorized its advertisement. The budget has been advertised. However, there were still a few items of discussion that were remaining for the board's consideration as we finalize the budget. The first item were the locker rooms at the police department. We did include $90,000 for the upgrade to the locker rooms in the general fund, which I believe are original to the municipal complex. Speaking with our superintendent, facilities, Mike Cacavel, the estimated cost for each locker room is approximately $2,400. But these prices have most likely changed since the quote was from July 2022. And speaking with him, we think proceeding forward with only the women's locker room at this time would be advantageous. We would then be able to reduce the cost of this project from $90,000 down to $20,000 based on the estimate that was received.
I have a question. How many women officers do we have? So that's fine. It's only going to benefit 3 officers. And what I was under the impression was that the men's locker room was the one that was really in need of an upgrade.
Which one was it, David?
The men's locker room has gotten more use over the last 20 plus years.
Because there's more men than females.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
When I asked Mike about it, he said to me the women's locker room was his recommendation.
Well, it really pared it down.
So it was based on tearing it down because of the board feedback is we want to do this, we just looking to fit the pared down number.
Right, can we go in and do the ladies' room and then at a future point do that?
So actually you can keep on your point.
Well, I guess my point is
Do the big use one first.
yes,
Okay.
the one that needs more attention, if we're gonna do it.
So you're saying, although we raised this as a question, you're actually saying maybe we should just do the project?
Yeah, honestly, the logistics would be better to do both at the same time.
Okay, so there's another item on the agenda as well, on your information here, Chris, right? So let's explore the whole picture and then we can go to the decision point.
Sure. So the next item of discussion was the administration building remodel. And taking a lot of the feedback from the board of this discussion, we had $250,000 allocated in the capital reserve fund. I would recommend that we replace the cubicles on both the finance side and the code side. Again, those are original to the building. They're reaching a condition where if they break, we can't get parts for them. They're difficult to maintain. And that would take the cost of that project down from $250,000 to $45,000. I think that would be I highly recommend that we do the cubicles.
Just the cubicles.
Yes, just the 5 cubicles in the, and I believe there was a table that was going to be replaced as well.
And that would complete, all the cubicles on the downstairs office area then?
Correct. It would be 5 cubicles that would be replaced, and our estimated cost would be $45,000.
The $250,000, that was to completely sort of remodel the first floor to make more room for files and
Correct.
things like that, so.
If that was eventually to happen, this $45,000 would not be wasted, correct?
Correct.
Well, that seems to make sense to me. Because I do think we need more time to understand the bigger picture around what the vision is for the general floor area, and how we look down the road before we authorize a bigger project. But we do need to take care of something that's not maintainable if we can't get the right parts and issues.
Yeah, we have employees working with damaged parts of their cubicles because we can't get parts to repair them.
Do you want to talk now about the interfund transfer as well?
I can address that if the board would like. So the last item that I remember hanging out there was the interfund transfer to the capital reserve fund. Christine did do an analysis of this. The amount that was originally in the budget was $2,183,716. This includes the cost to fund the projects outlined in the capital reserve fund as well as the township's debt service, which in 2023 is just over $541,000, including principal and interest. The discussion regarding the administration building remodel, if we reduce that by $205,000 as previously discussed, that would take the transfer down to just under $2 million. So in reviewing this with Christine, we believe that the budgeted interfund transfer could be reduced by $662,538 to a budgeted transfer of $1,316,178. We base this recommendation on transferring $775,000 for future capital costs and the budgeted 2023 debt service payments of just over $541,000. And looking at the fund balance in the capital reserve fund, this would draw the balance down to approximately $4 million. And while we recognize this would reduce the balance fairly significantly, it would maintain a level of flexibility for future budget years to receive a similar transfer adjustment. Christine and I do think we could consider reducing it even further, but I think that would result in having to commit to a much larger interfund transfer in future years. So $4 million is our comfort level to draw it down to.
So my thoughts on this particular item are that we do maintain a fairly healthy balance. I think $4 million is a pretty healthy balance for emergency issues that might need capital investment. The proposed change here is really lowering the year balance from $4.5 million to $4 million by reducing the amount of interfund transfer in the budget. That seems really sensible to me. I mean, the money, theoretically, we still have a fairly healthy surplus balance in the general fund, so that if there wasn't need for further capital for whatever reason, we could still address that in an authorized transfer at some point during the year, correct?
I believe so, yes. I think the board can do supplemental appropriations to the budget.
On the $4 million, that would be in the capital reserve fund. Those are earmarked for what proposed or ongoing projects. I mean, how much of that $4 million is earmarked in order to set aside for a project?
That would be the items that are in our 10-year capital. That would be the items that would be outlined in our 10-year capital plan. And the $4 million is based on, it's just slightly over $4 million. It's based on if we had done the transfer as is and completed all the projects that are allocated in the 2023 budget in the capital reserve fund, that would bring it down to about $4.8 million was the balance. So this will draw it down even further. So essentially, you're going to rely more heavily on your existing funds to complete the projects that are allocated in 2023 as opposed to relying more so on the transfers.
Yeah. I don't see any sense of having money sitting in the capital reserve fund. We could have it in the general fund. And if we need to, we can move it from the general fund to the capital reserve fund if we needed to. So I have it sitting there unearmarked.
And we're also, there are projects that we have allocated for that we know that we're going to seek grants for in the beginning of the year.
And we don't know how that's going to work out.
Exactly. So, and if we do receive those grants, those will go into the capital reserve fund to supplement the cost.
Yeah.
Hang on a minute, Margie. So I have a question on the, how many more years is left on the debt payment?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can ask Christine.
It's only 3 or 4, right? Not
It's
a lot.
not many.
Okay, any public comments on what we've just discussed, either any of the 3 items, the police lockers, the cubicle repair investment, and the amount to transfer to the capital reserve fund?
What have we decided about the lockers?
We haven't decided anything else.
Yeah,
We're just getting public comments. Steve?
Yeah, just as a resident, it makes sense to me to do both locker rooms, get the project done, and move forward.
Thanks, Steve. Marge, you had a question?
I've brought this up in years past, and I even brought it up this year. So what I've seen other municipalities do, when they have a surplus at the end of the year, they make a transfer from the general fund to the capital reserve fund, say in November or December. So if we transferred, we've had $3.5, maybe $4 million more in revenue this year than was projected. So we just take some of that before the end of the year, save the total cost of the locker rooms, and we transfer that from the general fund to the capital reserve fund before the end of this year. I think you have to pass a resolution to transfer money because it wasn't in the budget. You don't really need a reason why. And then in next year's budget, out of that capital reserve fund, you show the expenditure for the locker rooms, the whole thing coming out. So
is that the locker rooms are actually under the repair and maintenance within the general fund. It's not a capital item. And what you're saying is the opposite of what John's suggesting, which is why have a higher balance in the capital reserve fund when you don't have anything earmarked to spend it on? It's more flexibility to have it in the general fund. And if you need it in a year, if we need a resolution or whatever else, we can just transfer it as needed. So.
Yeah, and that's the way we used to do it. I thought the last couple of years we've been taking any capital expense and transferring it to the capital reserve fund, which didn't.
Well, we did. We manage the capital reserve fund manages the debt payment on the public works building. It manages the procurement of capital equipment, trucks, whatever else we need to be approved as part of the capital plan. And it also has the funds that are used to spend on the infrastructure projects like the stormwater projects or the PRP projects under the permit. So that because capital investments but assets come out of that fund, it's just a way to manage the use of the money. Okay.
So I've also seen capital reserve funds and capital project funds. I mean, does it make sense to start another fund with all this excess money? I mean, we have.
We don't think so. We have a capital reserve fund which funds what I just described, and then there are, we have specific unique funds that are relative to particular requirements like restricted parks fund and these other things. I don't think we have more than one capital fund that we use to fund the items I described.
And so our policy for the township is still to have a minimum of 25% of annual expenditures. I forget if it's revenues or expenditures. So we're still sitting on.
You're absolutely right. We have some very healthy balances in many funds, and that's a good thing. We have a lot of demands coming up to invest that money.
Okay.
So Are there any other questions about these items or the ability of spending money on them? So board, back to you with respect to what do we want to do? Is this a suggestion, certainly reinforced by Steve, that we should just bite the bullet and do the police locker rooms in one project and not have to mobilize and do it twice, so to speak, over a couple of years? That seems to make sense to me. The more I thought about this, but the amount involved.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm hearing the reason for doing the locker rooms is because they were the original ones. I have a problem. Just because they're original don't mean it has to be done. I mean, I want to be a little more convinced that there's a real need to do these locker rooms. I haven't heard from any of the police officers or from the police chief that there was a need for this to be done. And I don't want us to spend a bunch of money just because they were original.
That building gets 24-hour use, 365 days a year. The new lockers are more equipped to the new equipment the officers have. It's better benches that they're built in. It's got, I believe it's got the charging component for some of their equipment. It's a much better use, plus the bath facilities, all that. While you're in there, we have to do the floors, so we're going to go into the bath areas. Some of the petitions are rusty, pulling out of walls. You know, it needs some TLC in there.
I mean, I did go upstairs, with the chief and took a look at it. Not that I spent a lot of time there. It didn't look to me like it was, really falling apart.
Dave,
Maybe
now,
I
what's
missed
your
something, I
opinion?
don't know.
I think
The
Chief
locker
Carroll,
rooms, what's that?
Chief Carroll would be better suited to.
Okay.
Well, he's
Well,
neutral.
I thought you wanted to ask some input since you
He's saying neutral.
He's saying neutral there.
Yeah, he said he's.
I guess my only comment was, I don't see the point in spending $20,000
No, that's
to
a
do the
good point.
women's locker room when, yeah, and so, I mean, would it be also cheaper to do both projects together? So say if we did go ahead and do the women's locker room this year, or next year, and then the following year we had to bring people back in because maybe, I don't know, the men's locker room
Well,
really needs it.
you have the trades in at one time. You limit dust, dirt, and disruption. I mean, it would be better all the way around. And things don't seem to get cheaper from year to year.
Just kicking the can too. It's going to need to be done sooner or later. So the longer you wait, the more expensive it is. And
So let me ask the board a question. Tonight, we just decided whether to put a number in the budget. We can still decide to vet this more thoroughly before we approve the project to go ahead. We could specifically say, don't start work on this, or we have a specific vote on it. So I'm asking you tonight, are you in a position to say confidently you're ready to support doing the project and moving ahead with it, or are you comfortable enough to say, let's put some money in the budget to earmark for this project, and we will decide right before we're ready to embark on the project whether we're still committed to doing it
I'm comfortable with the $90,000
in the budget? And do you want to have yes, we need to approve this before we start work?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's that one. Are we comfortable, board, with the admin building cube $45,000 fix-it suggestion to include that in the? Is that a maintenance repair? That's a capital item, right?
Yes, that would be a capital item.
Yeah. Are we comfortable that that is an appropriate amount to include in the capital budget? Yes.
yes.
I'm not comfortable with the lockers thing. I'm still not convinced.
No. Well, all we're doing is putting in the budget, John. That doesn't mean we're going to approve proceeding with it.
Now you know how these things work, though.
Okay, so you want to have a vote tonight then to proceed or not with it?
Well, I kind of like the locker, I mean, the other things I'm comfortable with. I think they make a lot of sense. The locker rooms are still not sold on it.
Okay, so you're saying you're not comfortable including it in the budget?
Not at this point, no.
Okay, so other board members, do you want to proceed with including it in the budget and vote on including it in the budget, or do you want to just authorize the project to go ahead and put money in the budget, period?
I'd like to review it first. I'm okay with having male and female lockers done, with the exception that I'd like to review it, the work
Okay, so
before
you
it
want
gets
to,
done.
okay.
I'm okay with proceeding, putting the money in the budget for it, and just review the work before it's actually
Okay,
done.
Robin, is that your position too?
Yes.
Okay, Ashley, is that your position? Okay. So John, we have 3 board members that are comfortable putting it in. you still have a chance to weigh in, because they all said they want to have a chance to approve whether it proceeds or not.
No, I understand, but once it's put in the budget, then it's kind of a done deal.
I disagree with that. We have certain things that go in budgets that don't get done, for whatever reason. I mean, especially if you know the board's not going to approve, it has to approve proceeding with it, right?
Yep.
So you have to check in with us before they go ahead. That's what we're asking for. Okay, so moving on to the administration building Q base. What is the position of the board relative to including $45,000 in the budget for capital budget for that?
Yes.
Okay, come back. John?
Now with that, yeah.
Actually. Okay, so we're comfortable with that. And then the final one is I support the proposal from Christine and Chris that we can lower the interfund transfer and target with the $4 million balance at the end of 23 in the capital reserve fund.
So just so the board's aware, the amount of the transfer that will be allocated in the final budget will be $1,316,178.
Is any board member not in agreement with that approach? Okay. So I don't, do we need a motion? We've given you direction tonight, so
You have given me clear direction.
Okay.
All right, one last comment. Just when you look at this last paragraph, and it says the recommendation is based on transferring $775,000 for future capital costs. If we transferred the $775,000 before the end of the year, then it's not in the budget for next year. So then then we've just reduced our deficit for next year for $775,000.
All these items that I outlined will reduce the deficit that was in the budget.
Okay, but our budget for next year will still show revenues and expenditures a deficit.
I'm not going to comment on that because I don't have the numbers directly in front of me, but I know all of these will reduce that, will shrink that gap.
All right.
It's a deficit, again, the word deficit, as I said, told you at the last meeting, describes a difference between the revenue and the expenses. That will be reduced, like Chris said, but we are sitting on, and you pointed out yourself earlier, very fat balances that we can use for these kind of expenditures to overall this balance. Very good. So we move on to the next agenda item.
Mr. Whitehead.
Doug.
Is the $45,000 for the 5 cubicles a reasonable price? It seems a little high for 5 cubicles, or that's just what these things cost these days?
That is what they cost these days. This is based on the quotes that we received.
And it includes the desk and
It's everything.
the whole structure there and electrical hookups.
The proposals our facility superintendent provided to me and Christine were like 7 pages outlining all the material. And yes, this is what it costs.
I just bought a sit-stand desk this year. It cost me close to $1,000. Just a desk that goes up and down. That wasn't a cube or anything. It's just one piece of furniture.
It's all the IT and electric, I think, is all part of the project.
Yes.
Okay, ready to move on to agenda item number 11, which is discussion and possible approval of a facility naming application to dedicate the Little League baseball field at the West Goshen Community Park in memory of Ray Halverson. So, before the board tonight is a proposed facility naming application to dedicate the Little League field in the Township Community Park in memory of Ray Halverson. The application was submitted by Ed Smith, and this location is being requested due to Mr. Halverson's involvement with the East Side Little League. A copy of the application was provided to the board and as part of the agenda materials. Pursuant to the policy adopted by the board earlier this year, the proposed dedication has been reviewed by the Park and Recreation Board, and at their meeting on November the 14th, they voted to recommend approval of the request. Does the board have questions or comments about the proposed naming application?
I just want to make a comment. I knew Ray over the years, and I think he's worked on different sides of the political divide, that's for sure. But he's the kind of guy to sit down and have a conversation with you, have a beer or whatever, and you can walk away disagreeing, but disagreeing amicably. And also, he contributed a lot to this community. Both as a board supervisor and also a chairperson of the chairman of director of public facilities. And just an all-around good guy. I mean, he's the kind of guy that really contributed and loved this community. And I think his participation with the Little League and all that, which I frankly wasn't aware of until later, it just underscores that even more so. He just had a lot of concern about the community here. His family grew up here, and he did a lot to make it the kind of place we all want to live in. I think this is a very appropriate memorial for him, given his service as a Little League coach over the years. I think it would be something that his family would appreciate. In fact, I had a conversation with his wife. She thought that would be the way to do it. So I fully support this.
I just wanted to add a few things too. As far as Ray with the ball field, he was so committed to the boys. Of course, my husband was too as a coach for about 18 years. That at his funeral, the whole team came to his funeral and said what the impact he had on their lives and how they helped form as a coach, the decisions they made in their life and how the impact Ray had on him. Two other things relative to that. Ray was so dedicated with the township that he was actually buried with the West Goshen Township shirt on. And he was also telling many people for many years, as Dave probably knows, that West Goshen Township was his fourth child. So he's very dedicated to the township, and I think this is a very appropriate thing to do for him with the ball field, since he dedicated so much of his time not only to the township, but to the boys and the impact he had on them, and also to the ball fields. I will say that because my husband submitted the application, I will not be voting tonight. I don't think it's appropriate for me to vote on that.
My comment is I did not know Ray very well at all, but I'll say this, he's the reason I'm probably here tonight, because I was interested in what was happening at the sewer authority, but wasn't really, because as an engineer, it was in my wheelhouse. I was getting curious about what I might be interested in doing post my corporate life. And I was kind of on the fence as to whether to do something or not. And Ray was one of the people who reached out to me and spoke to me about the community benefit of being involved and the supportive of doing whatever I could to get involved. So he convinced me that maybe doing something like being involved with the sewer authority was a good thing. So I thank him for that.
Actually, you did the same to me. That's how I got on the sewer authority.
Okay, so motion to, let me just make sure I get this right, to approve the facility naming of the Little League baseball field at the West Goshen Community Park in memory of Ray Howison. So I'd like to make that motion.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. I will second the motion. Is there any public comment or questions on the motion? Margie?
Yeah, I would just ask that the board consider tabling this for maybe until July. That would be 1 year after Mr. Halverson's death, for a couple of reasons. As you know, Dr. White was tragically killed while he was serving. His son has been trying to get a facility named after him, and nothing's happened. And I think it would be appropriate if the township wants to dedicate or name a field or a facility for Mr. Halverson. They should also name something for Dr. White.
Thank you, Margie. We'll come back to that comment in a minute. Someone else have that? Jamie?
I would like to say that Ray was a great guy, and I love to work with him. You are sick of hearing me say that I've lived here for a little over 20 years and have been dealing with the township on stormwater issues. But boy, whenever I called Ray, there was a time when Rick called me and said, Ray says you called him at home, and he called me at home and said, go see what Jamie needs. Ray was amazing. He was a great guy. When he got elected to the Board of Supervisors, I saw him one day and said, Ray, I'm mad. He says, why are you mad? I said, I voted for you, you're one. You're the only Republican I've ever voted for in my life, and I would do it whatever you run for. So I appreciate the comments about Dr. White, and I also highly respected Dr. White and think that we should name something after Dr. White. I think they were both fine gentlemen who dedicated an amazing amount of time and energy to the township. And they weren't very political in nature. They were really just looking for common sense things to make life in West Goshen Township better for the people.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else want to make a comment? No?
Evening, Doug White, West Goshen. I support doing something for Ray conceptually. If it's the ball, if the Park and Rec Board feels it's the ball field, I agree with that. My dad and Ray go back to 1984. They met on the Planning Commission. Ray was a patient for probably over 25 years. He was last in my dental chair in November, and he cried about my dad. Okay. Anyway, I'm sorry. So, if you pass something, I would respectfully request maybe you pass it with intent or condition to also do something for my dad when the detail is worked out. Whereas Margie said maybe wait. In the Jewish tradition, we always wait a year. That's when we did the tree. I think that doing something official for Ray is the right thing to do. When you want to do it, do it tonight. I mean, it's your choice. Maybe do it with a little bit of a attachment that's an intent or condition. Remember my dad too. But that's up to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. So I just want to comment that, the board is aware that Doug has requested that some similar consideration be given to naming something in honor of his father, and the board is absolutely amenable to hearing a specific request on that. And I believe Chris is asking to meet with Doug and maybe one or two board members and talk through what specific request you might have in mind, and then bring that to the board for consideration and hopefully approval. I personally feel that we put the process in place, this is me speaking not on behalf of the board, we put a process in place in February. We're still having some teething issues with it relative to how that process can run smoothly. It just so happens that the way that the request for Ray was moved through, it was just need to go through a little smoother. I think we just need to regroup with you, Doug, around what specifically, in a similar way, we could do to honor the memory of your father. Okay. I know we've done a couple of things today, but we're looking for something that's maybe a little bit, longer term. So again, I'd suggest that having this meeting will allow us to identify something that might be appropriate to move forward. Mark, do you want to comment?
Just one last thing. The tree out front honoring Dr. White was donated by the local Republican committee. The bench at the park was donated by East Goshen Township. So the township has not, there are a few things with Dr. White's name on, but none of them from the township. Just keep that in mind. And then also just curious as to cost of something. I mean, have we approached, or has the applicant approached East Little League? Would they donate? Is this just going to be a sign on the field? Like, is there a budget number? Like, what entails?
So we're having details worked out. That's a great suggestion. We can certainly see if there's willingness to share in the cost of doing it. So if we were to approve this tonight, we're just simply approving the naming and what specifically that looks like as a detail to be still to be worked out and how it gets funded.
So something would come back before the board as far as cost and the sign, or is it a plaque, or is it a name of the field, or what extent is this?
So that's a good question. I mean, my feeling is we're obviously, Maya was expecting something relatively straightforward and simple and not a large cost, but something that clearly is there to show that that field is in recognition of Mr. Allison. So I wasn't trying to get into managing the expenditure of every item.
Sure, but if we're going to do it, it should probably be in the budget for next year.
Well, we have a budget that has specific items related to parks and recreation and others where these costs can be funded from. It's not down to the penny on these budget numbers.
anticipate it being a large expense anyway, you know.
Yeah.
And something that Parks and Rec could take a look at as far as
Yeah, it's consistency.
specifying a plaque or something like that and where it could be located. And this also be true for your dad as well.
Yeah.
Understand, this is not in any way disrespect for your father. This is just for Ray Halverson. We're definitely going to address a memorial for your dad.
Yeah, it's, I agree. I think there's a lot of validity to the fact that Doug's been asking for this for some time, that Dr. White was still while serving. And I don't know Mr. Halverson, and I absolutely support this, but I think just from the way that he sounds, he is the kind of person that would say, you know what, approve this tonight with the condition that you do something for my buddy Doc White. So I'm in favor of doing that because I think it seems like that's the right thing to do.
Okay, so I forget, do we have a motion yet?
No, we had a motion and a second.
We already had a motion and a second,
I'll
so.
make the motion and you second it.
Okay, so Ashley's making a suggestion to modify the motion to include that it also be conditional upon, at some point, recognizing something in terms of naming for Dr. White. Is that correct?
And we have to, that's going to happen. I can tell you that right now. I mean, do we have to make that part of a motion here for this?
That was Doug's request, so.
Because right now, I mean, we're going to have a meeting with you and maybe another board member talking about what exactly would be appropriate. Because you had several suggestions. You got to narrow it down.
The details will be worked out, yes. But again, it's your decision.
Yeah,
but I feel that maybe doing it, if you're going to do something tonight with a little attachment of intent, or I don't know if condition is the right word, but.
Well, we're giving you our intent.
Yeah.
We're expressing our intent. I've heard all board members basically say it's our intent. I don't like having it attached as a condition because I believe we're trying to honor Ray Howson and specific things tonight. We're giving you our intent. We don't know what you're going to. I'm just making this up. You're a reasonable guy. I don't know what you're maybe going to ask for that necessarily holds this up because you want something that the rest of the board doesn't feel comfortable with. So I'd like to vote on this as is in recognition of Mr. Howison for the Little League, for the baseball field name.
And that's how this memorial application is designed to do.
I think, Doug, if you want to submit some dates to Chris, and then I think you can meet.
Okay.
Sooner than later, I would do that, and just even tomorrow, send them an email with some dates, and then we'll get it on the calendar, and then we'll also have maybe two board members.
Tina, thank you, but I've been the one who's been suffering for 8 years.
Yeah, I understand.
And can't sleep at night still.
Yeah.
And to relegate something that happened, I mean, of course, I'm sad about Ray, I cried for Ray too, but to relegate it to a piece of paper and some red tape stuff,
Yeah.
I can't get my head around that a little bit. So again, I respect what you're going to do. Okay, I get a little emotional because there's a lot of history in this room. Okay, but I'm sorry.
I highly respect that, Doug. I just want to get it moving so that you can get the plaque for your dad, is all I'm saying, so that we can get a date set where we can meet.
I'll do that. That's not a. Yes, you're right. I will come in and meet. We'll work it out.
Decide on it.
So that's the agreed next step. So we have a way forward on that. So right now, actually, you still want to modify the motion, or are you comfortable with what we've just discussed?
Maybe you can just say to do this with the intent of, and along with.
I think they want to treat this as its own thing,
Yeah, its own
which I
decision.
understand and respect, but I wanted to say for the record that this is going to happen for your father.
And we can do that.
Definitely gonna happen.
Is your
Okay.
opinion.
It will happen.
Okay. Is there any final comment or questions on the motion? Okay, we're ready to take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Thank you, Doug. Next up is agenda item number 12, discussion and possible adoption of resolution number 21, 2022, authorizing the submission of a PA small water and sewer grant application to stormwater improvements in the North Hill development. If I can find this. Okay. So Chris, why don't you just walk through where we are with this? We've had this on the agenda for a couple of meetings, and we're at the point now to be able to act on it.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The resolution that's before the board is resolution number 21-2022, which would authorize the submission of a PA small water and sewer application to the Commonwealth Financing Authority and authorize certain officials to execute the appropriate documents associated with the application, which is outlined in the resolution would be yourself, Mr. Chairman, myself, and our consulting engineer from Carroll Engineering, Chris Peterson. So the proposed application seeks funding for certain stormwater improvements in the North Hill development based on the presentation from Carroll Engineering on November 1st. And a proposal from Carroll Engineering to prepare the application was approved by the board on November 15th. The application would seek funding in the amount of $500,000, which is the maximum award permitted under the program. And there would be a funding commitment of 15% of the match, 15% of the costs. So certain easements would be required as part of this project. There are 4 from certain property owners. We don't have the details of those easements at this time, but we have reached out to all the property owners in order to determine if they're willing to work with the township on granting the necessary easements for this work. And based on the responses that have been received, the property owners are open to working with the township.
Okay, just so we're clear, the scope of work that's included in the $500,000 includes the opinion of probable cost for a 48-inch storm sewer crossing under West Penn Drive and an associated detention facility before the Civic Association pond.
That is correct.
Okay, it includes the, that is included in the scope. So the impoundment of stormwater at the head wall at 963 West Penn Drive would be eliminated. The concrete line swale between 962 and 964 West Penn Drive would be removed. Erosion in the swale downslope of the concrete line swale would be mitigated through the addition of a storm sewer pipe extension and end wall at the pond. A retention facility just upslope of the pond would reduce the flow rate prior to stormwater entering the pond. That is now included in the scope of this project, was not included in the original draft report. And that was determined to be required after discussion with the engineers to reduce adverse impacts into the pond. Correct?
That is all correct.
Right. And on the $500,000, the cost for the project, it's $500,000 of which our share would be $75,000 in the township, and the grant amount would be $425,000 if we get it. $425,000. Was it 500 plus our 75?
I believe it's 500 plus our 75. So the maximum amount that could be awarded would be $500,000. So it'd be whatever we're required to. There would be a total project cost, and then whatever that total project cost is, we would have 15% of that cost.
In addition of that cost.
Correct.
Okay. So we could fund up to $575,000 of work.
Correct.
For this. Okay. Okay, so I'm clear. Is there any questions or comments from the board?
What's the timeline for the grant application and for the awarding of the grant?
The grant application is due December 21st. And just so the board is aware, we have received pictures and other documentation from some of the property owners to include in our grant application. Mr. Peterson thought that would be helpful, and I agree with him. We've also reached out to our local state representatives for letters of support. We received one back from our Representative Pielli. We're still waiting on one from Senator Kane. In terms of a timeline on awarding, I would guess in working with the state in past projects, we'd probably be looking at something in the latter portion of 2023, maybe around September. However, since this is being funded through American Rescue Plan Act funds, I'm cautiously optimistic that it may be a little bit sooner, just because they have to, under the federal legislation, have to commit the money and spend it within a certain time frame. But I reasonably guess would be sometime in the latter part of 2023.
And how much time do we have to spend the money?
Well, the money, usually it's a 3-year program. I don't know what the grant requirements would be. because this is being funded through ARPA and this is a special round, under the federal legislation, the money has to be committed by the end of 2024 and spent by the end of 2026. Well, it's, yeah, it would be 2 years. Yeah.
And is this resolution a requirement of the grant application process?
Yes.
Any other questions from the board? Right. I'm going to, I'll make the motion to approve resolution number 21-2022 to submit a PA small water and sewer grant application.
I'll second it.
Thank you, John. Is there any public comments or questions on the motion? Can you start at the back? Mr. Wall?
Okay. Hi, Jen Roth from North Hill. The document that you're just looking at, Sean, where you were saying, okay, it's going to be the pipe and the forebay,
Yeah.
where can we see that? Like, we haven't seen that yet.
Happy to give you a copy of it. It was basically some correspondence between Chris and board members and the engineers around what is the kind of scope of work that we're having Carol work up to submit the grant application. But it's basically what I just described.
Okay. Yeah.
As I said, the original presentation that Chris did, Chris Peterson from Carroll, didn't include that retention basin before the pond. When we carved out this piece of work from the overall picture and he looked at it in more detail, as part of this grant application, that became needed and necessary to make sure the pond was not adversely affected from the.
And then when it says the erosion will be mitigated, will they fill the gully in, the one that's there, is that going to be filled in after the work, or will there just be a pipe laying in it and then it will stop?
Well, the new pipe will be buried. The existing, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone here, but the existing erosion will be, managed as part of landscape in that area as part of the project. I believe that was included in the scope of work.
I think you also need to keep in mind that this hasn't been designed.
Yes.
So we don't know whether it's going to be a pipe, we don't know whether it's going to be a swale, we don't know what size it's going to be. There's a lot of variables here to be looked at, and then a pipe is not necessarily the best answer. So we're going to have to look at that during the design. So to say right now it's going to be a 48-inch pipe, maybe it is and maybe it isn't, but it's going to be something along those lines.
That's what was costed, right, Rick? That's what the design basis is for costing purposes.
Yeah, for estimating purposes. You got to estimate on something, but the design isn't done yet, so that'll be determined during design.
I mean, to set expectations, I'm not sure the board's going to approve any expenditure of money on this before we know whether we get the grant or not. So we won't have any further detail around what the design ultimately needs to be, because we're not going to authorize Carroll to start spending thousands of dollars on design until we know the outcome of the grant application. And also, if you remember, Carroll Engineering owes that we've commissioned them a piece of work to provide design information or conceptual design mitigations for other areas of the township, and we expect that to be reported out late spring, early summer as well. So this might all come together in terms of a whole big picture for work that might be needed in the future.
Just so the board is aware, I did ask Chris today if he had an estimate on what the design cost would be associated with this, and his estimate was $41,000 based on the amount that would be allocated in the grant application. Because that's a good, he believes that is a good estimate to go off for design costs.
Other questions, Jamie?
So do you have any type of conceptual estimate from the engineer of what it's going to cost to implement a likely plan? Even though we don't know.
In the last meeting we had, the basis for the cost was provided, right? Got a build up of the overall cost.
So you know what it?
I don't have it with me tonight.
Is it less than 500?
What was less?
The engineered estimate for implementing a likely plan. In other words, you're going to apply for a grant for $500,000.
Yeah,
let's say you get it.
Design work.
Right. Let's say you get it.
Yeah.
And then there's 40,000. We'll just say 40,000 for design.
Yeah.
That's then 460,000. You guys are kicking in 75. So somebody has to do that math. We're going to 535 or something. Do we know that 535 is enough to do the work?
Based on the engineer's opinion of probable cost,
Right.
yes.
And might there be any left over?
We're far ahead of ourselves here now, so.
Okay, so one last question, and then I'll be done.
Okay.
I know you have to move on to other neighborhoods in the township to do these, but it seems that when Carol does the initial study and submits it to you, there should be an opportunity for one round of revisions before you say, okay, conceptually, this one's done. Because in my letter to you, I had made some suggestions, and my fear is that if you get the grant and this work gets done, and you move on to the other neighborhoods, that nobody's going to remember that there were some other things that were to be considered by the engineer to be put in that report, so that we, in the future, have something on the shelf ready to go.
Yeah,
That's all.
my answer would be that we've got the work they've done today, we've got some comments from yourself, we've carved out a piece of it to try to get some grant money to start doing some actual mitigation work. And we're not going to forget what we've already done. It's all there and information's there. We need to try to get information about other parts of the township too, and
I agree.
We'll keep moving forward.
Thank you.
You have to understand here also, the driving force here for us to move like we are right now is that there was a limit to $500,000 by the PA Small Water and Sewer Grant Application Program. So we were trying to get something here while the window of opportunity was available to us. And that window was closing as of December the 21st.
Gotcha.
So we didn't want to keep on kicking this ball around. We wanted to make a move.
I agree.
And Mr. Ingram, just so you're aware, your correspondence was forwarded to the board and was also forwarded to in-house engineering staff, specifically Mr. Kolakowski, who reviewed it, so we are aware of it, and we do meet with Carroll Engineering regularly going through these projects, so it will be considered as part of our design process.
Will you get back to me?
We are way ahead of, you're getting way ahead of yourself. As of right now, we're just looking at a grant application, but I wanted you to know that it has been received and it is being reviewed.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm Doug Rayner. I'm at 963 West Penn Drive. I just want to be clear, does this window include further input from property owners that are impacted before the 21st, or is that beyond that?
So whatever, comments or suggestions or whatever else you have, please, let staff know, let the engineer know. We're just trying to make sure we can submit an application that has an official engineer's estimated value for the scope of work that we put in it. We haven't designed it in detail. We don't have the easements from the property owners defined. We don't even have the money. What we're doing is asking for the money. So I think there'll be plenty of opportunity to shape the design as we go forward. And like I said, really, we're not going to get to that detailed level until we know about the grant.
Can I mention something? I think we need to keep in mind here, this $500,000 is only a small part of what needs to be done in North Hill. There's more than $500,000 that needs to be done in the northern section. There's probably another $500,000 that needs to be done in the southern section. So this grant is not going to allow us to address all of the improvements that are needed, even in the north section. So I think we need to understand that. This is not going to fix all the problems right now. It's just a step in the right direction. We need to start from the bottom and go up. So up is going to stop somewhere. We don't know where yet, but it's not all going to get done in this round. It's important to know that.
Other comments or questions? Did we have a motion? Did we have a second, right? Do we have a second, Chris? We do.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it was yourself and then Mr. Hellman was the second.
Margie?
Is there any way to incorporate this into the PRP that's next or following on the agenda?
This is a pollution reduction project.
If we're doing a new catch basin or stormwater retention basin.
It doesn't necessarily meet the PRP criteria.
Did we look at it to see if it does?
It isn't designed yet. Once we design it, we can look at it, and if we can get credit for it, we will absolutely take credit for it.
The other projects.
But to implement it in the PRP plan right now, when there's barely a conceptual design, is premature.
So you're saying all the ones in the PRP, the plan that we're going to discuss, and 2 more agenda items, they all have plans?
No, that's not what I said.
But you said it doesn't, that's why it can't be in the plan.
It's too late to put this in the PRP plan right now.
Oh, I mean, the other thing is, the board's not approved moving this project forward. We may say, we're not doing it, we don't get the money, we're not going to do it, it's on the back burner for whatever, so we can't include it as a project until we're committed to doing it, right?
Yeah, we'll discuss it in
Okay.
two more agenda items here. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to take a vote. Is there any final questions or comments? Jan?
I just have one more comment, and that is, I just wanted to thank you, actually. Like, you know, I don't want you to get the wrong idea that we're coming and complaining and things like that. We are so thrilled that this is even a possibility. So I just want to thank you all for all the work you've done on our behalf in the past. And if this thing happens, oh my gosh, thank you so much for you know, pushing it through and making it happen for us.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that. Thanks, much appreciated.
I think that's our job, really.
All right, so let's take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 13, discussion and possible adoption of ordinance number 8-2022, amending chapter 78 of the West Goshen Township Code of Ordinances to establish new stop intersections and speed limits on certain roads.
So, Mr. Chairman, you've already adopted all of these through resolution, but the motor vehicle code requires that a local authority such as the township to enforce the speed limit restrictions and all of these other restrictions, it has to be done through an ordinance. So what we do is we compile all the resolutions that you've adopted throughout the year, and we do it into one ordinance at the end of the year, so we save on advertising costs. So all of these have already been resolved and adopted, but now it's just being done in an ordinance format. It'll go into your code book and can be properly enforced through your police.
Okay, is there a board member willing to make a motion to adopt ordinance number 8-2022, amending chapter 78 of the West Goshen Township Code to establish the stop intersections and speed limits on certain roads?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second? Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Ashley. Is there any public comments or questions? Archie?
I'm not up to date on my research on this, but I looked at this before and I thought, is it Aram Avenue is an arterial road? Is it defined as an
It's a collector road.
collector road? Okay,
And what's your question?
I thought collector roads could not have a speed limit lower than 35 miles.
No, that's not correct. The speed limits are discerned by a traffic study, and you go plus or minus 5 miles an hour over the 85th percentile speed of the road.
There's also a section, I looked at it today, there's also a section in the motor vehicle code that allows roads to be 25 miles per hour if they're within a residence district, and this meets that qualification.
Okay. So is the entirety of Aram Avenue, Pottstown Pike to Phoenixville Pike, has it been dedicated, and are we able to set the speed limit?
It is set based on a request of the property owner under the motor vehicle code that came to the board this summer. I believe it was in September, and it was related to initially related to bus stops, and the board approved the request of the property owner via resolution as allowed since they have 10 contiguous acres or more.
Any other public comments or questions?
I don't understand it. Thank you for your question.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we're ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Next up is item number 14, discussion and possible authorization to submit the updated pollution reduction plan for West Goshen Township to the PA Department of Environmental Protection for review. Chris, would you mind leading us through where we are with this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So before the Board of Supervisors this evening is consideration to authorize the Township's updated pollution reduction plan to the PA Department of Environmental Protection for review. The board approved the proposal from HRG to update the Township's PRP plan on February 15th, as it was determined that the current plan is outdated and does not match the sediment reduction requirements for the current MS4 permit. Representatives from HRG held a presentation on the updated plan on November 1st, and the board authorized the document for public comment. The required legal advertisement was published in the November 3rd, 2022 edition of the Daily Local News. Additionally, the draft updated PRP was posted on the Township website and included in the November newsletter. The public comment period opened on November 3rd and closed on December 5th. We did receive a few public comments, which are documented in a memo to the board, as well as responses from HRG, which were provided to the individuals who submitted comments.
Thank you, Chris. Does the board have any comments or questions about the status of the PRP and its status for ready for submission to the PA Department of Environmental Protection?
Mr. Chairman, we do have a representative from HRG in attendance in the event there are any questions.
Just have one question here for more informational purposes. On page 16 and 19, implementation schedule for proposed short-term BMP. Can you give an idea on of those 11 projects, which of those are completed or in the process of being completed and maybe to be completed soon?
Let's see.
I mean, Rick, do you have any, maybe shed some light on that? I know Iowa Basin is done, isn't it?
Iowa Basin retrofits are completed, and the West Goshen sewage plant stream buffer is completed. Pine Valley detention basin is completed.
And we do have, I think I noted this in a previous memo, we do have design proposals from HRG for 2 of the projects outlined in here. They have been included in the budget. However, we do not want to present those to the board for consideration until we hear back from DEP on their feedback on the updated plan.
So we're just sending this off to Department of Environmental Protection for their review at this point.
Review and approval, yes.
Okay, and then we'll send it back to us.
Rick, what's the timeline you would expect to get a response from DEP on their review? And is it going to stymie you moving forward with actually moving some of these projects to construction?
I quite honestly can't give you an answer to that. Southeast region has been very slow in responding to PRP reviews. Our first PRP review took almost 2 years. I don't know if this is going to be any quicker or not, but the sooner we get it in, the sooner it gets in the process.
Mr. Chairman, I can tell you from past experience, we submitted our initial PRP in Malvern in November of 2017 and received comments in March of 2020.
Would we proceed with any of these projects while waiting for comments and feedback?
I would recommend that we do. If we don't, there's no way we can meet the requirements of the PRP that's in effect now or the new one. I think that these projects are appropriate and will meet our requirements, provided DEP doesn't change the requirements again like they did last time. But we're working on the best information we have so far, and I think it would be reasonable to proceed with the projects in a timely manner on a budgeted basis as we continue forward. If we don't, we're not going to meet the requirements.
The gentleman from HRG who's here, I forget your name, sir.
Lance Logan.
Yeah, Lance. So what's your experience with other municipal clients relative to this situation where they resubmitted PRP plans, or most of them moving forward with the projects despite not potentially receiving feedback from DEP?
I would say generally they're supportive of them, so yeah, I would say yes.
Okay. Any other board comments or questions?
If DEP were to change their requirements for whatever reason, we would have to go back to these projects that were completed and do something else.
We would probably have to do something additional. What we would already have done would still apply, but we might have to do more.
Right. Isn't there a whole public process for them? I mean, that's not something that just they can sneak in. They have to do like a whole public process. There has to be a comment period. It has to be published in the Pennsylvania Bulletin. Like, it's not something they can just, we would know about it if they were proposing, and you would have the opportunity to comment and participate and seek guidance on projects that you might have already designed and started in the works. And because that's what I'm thinking, like, if you go to have, if one of these projects comes before you to authorize expenditure of funds, maybe you can have HRG or Rick or Brian, I guess, would be seek out, a meeting or something with the DEP and say, hey, this is where we are, to sort of give us a feeling of yes, please move forward in this regard. It's not that it's going to happen overnight without your knowledge.
No, Christian's right. This process has taken 4 or 5 years as it is now. And it's not a matter of they're not going to approve these. It's just that they may change the requirements and we may need to do more projects than this. These will not go to waste or not be approved. It's just the requirements keep getting more and more stringent as we go along, and we're playing catch up the entire time. So, but they're not going to go to waste. They'll be viable projects. They'll be beneficial projects. So you're not wasting any money by doing them.
Any other board comments or questions? Okay, I want to make the motion to submit the updated pollution reduction plan to West Goshen Township to the PA Department of Environmental Protection for their review. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I think that's yours first.
No problem.
Are there any public comments or questions on the motion? Margie?
Can you just give a little background? Why was this amendment needed? Was this requested by the DEP, or is this something that the township just wanted to?
DEP changed the requirements that we have to meet our PRP goals. The only way we can meet those is to add projects to what was already done before. And in doing so, we modified some of the projects that were already in there. For instance, the Basin Road project. That was a very ambitious project. It was very large. We found out we couldn't do most of it right now because DEP has classified the berm as a dam, and you've got to go through a whole bunch of dam permitting and other stuff. So we significantly reduced the size of that project to just include stream bank restoration, which is not within the area that's deemed to be a dam. So we're fine-tuning the program as we go along, and we're adding projects to it because DEP has made the project more stringent. So our current PRP plan will not meet the current requirements for DEP, so we're required to upgrade it. So we show that we are going to meet the requirements of DEP that are now the current requirements.
So the amendment was initiated by the township?
Yes.
And then also, again, just for the record, if a comment, added comment, public comments is that if the North Hill project moves forward, that it's possible that we get credit for that project as part of this plan, the requirements from DEP that that project should be included.
Sure, that's exactly what we've already done. We added the 2 Idlewild Basin projects that we've already completed, and we added the sewage treatment plant riparian buffer project. Those are projects we got grants for and other funding for. We did them, we completed them, we're going to get credit for them, and we added them to the PRP. And we can do the same thing with North Hills if it works out.
Great.
Down the road.
Great, thank you very much.
Margie? Doug?
Is the consideration of a possible stormwater fee part of this plan, or is that separate?
That's totally separate. Any other questions? Yes, Jamie?
Rick, so the PRP requirements changed, but when you do projects, there was that one example where you just did the stream versus doing the work on the bank. But in general, your projects are sort of fully designed to 100%, and you build them, you would have to do more projects, but you wouldn't do the projects you're doing more intensely.
No, you would have to do additional projects.
Right. So I think that maybe there's a little confusion where some people think that you would do them differently, but no, just you have to do more of them.
No, you
to
only
meet
get
the
certain
requirement.
credit for doing certain things
Right.
in the stream, and you can only do certain things under the scope of a project. So
Exactly.
you would have to add additional projects or add additional length or additional size to an existing project.
Other comments or questions? Okay, we're ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Item number 15 on the agenda, discussion and possible approval of the Board of Supervisors 2023 meeting dates and times. Chris, I believe you're looking to get these approved tonight so you can then advertise them for, so we need to agree them tonight so you can advertise them this year.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And as I know in the past there have been some issues where we've run into holidays or election day and changed some things. I'm trying to kind of address those on the front end with some recommendations for the board so that I can advertise them early on. Just to note, so the second meeting in May would conflict with the primary election, so I'm recommending to move that to May 18th, which would be a Thursday. The first meeting in July would conflict with the 4th of July holiday, so I was recommending moving that to July 6th. And then the first meeting in November would conflict with the general election, so I'm recommending moving that to November 2nd, which would be the week prior. And my reason for that is because of the way the calendar falls in October, there's about a 3-week gap between meetings.
So it would just be a 2-week gap if we move to November the 2nd. Yeah.
And I don't think this would conflict with any of our other meeting dates.
Doug, we moved to one of the meetings in October this year to avoid a conflict with a Jewish major holiday. You had a chance to look at these. Do you have any comments on them?
Since this is usually done in, I'm not sure, I don't have the calendar in front,
I can check the calendar against all holidays, including the Jewish holidays based on Mr. Contact request from last year, and I did not find any conflicts.
So we're okay?
Yep, I did not find any conflicts.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so is there a motion to accept these meeting dates for the Board of Supervisors meeting for 2023 with the 3 changes that Chris has recommended? Thank you, Ashley. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tina. Is there any other public comment or questions? Margie?
I think there might be a typo here. You have July 4th.
Yeah, we just changed
Yeah, we're changing that to the
Change
6th.
to the 6th.
Oh.
I laid out how the calendar would look, and then the second part of my recommendations.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
I was just looking at it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Agenda item number 16, possible approval of the bills we paid for the general fund, the sewer revenue fund, the waste and recycling fund, and the capital reserve fund. Is there a motion to approve the bills to be paid for these funds? I'll make the motion. Is there a second?
I'll say it.
Thank you, John. Any public comment or questions, or board comments or questions on the bills to be paid?
I just want to note that part of the bills we're paying for this month is for the sewer and the trash rebate. And I think it's a great program that the township has and certainly needs to be supported and will be going into the future.
Thank you, John. Any other comments or questions? Okay, ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Yes, there is.
Thank you, Robin. Is there a second? Thank you, Ashley. All in favor of adjournment say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Let me stop the recording. No, it's actually, you drive by.